we finally got a new viability rankings thread update about 2.5 weeks after our massive tier shift. Now, there's been some very big changes. One of the things I'm going to immediately draw y'all's attention to as well. Dude, look at poor little Seer. There's just 7 Pokemon down here, and then look at everything else. So, I think what we're probably going to see in future updates is a ton of Pokemon dropping as we try and navigate this whole idea of, what's actually viable? Because in new metagame, you always have to solve it. And so, there's going to be maybe some more positive opinions of certain Pokemon than there will be in, say, a month from now. Before we get too far into this, though, of course, I'm going to remind y'all, I'm trying to get 10k subs by the end of the year. We're actually getting pretty close to 9k as well, and once we hit that, the countdown's really begin. So if you do like daily uploads, competitive Pokemon, you like these informative videos as well, where we just get to deep dive on the metagame, y'all get to hear me waffle on about whatever the hell, or sometimes like an hour. Make sure you subscribe, and if you aren't already subscribed, thank you. But go down there anyway and leave a like. That'd be pretty cool too. So, new additions, of course, we got a ton of our drops. Everything did get ranked. And then we got some Pokemon that were nominated for a VR spot that are now also ranked. So, Araquanid, at the start, B rank. So, obviously the main question you have to ask is, what does Araquanid have over Galvantula? Because Galv's really annoying since it has a lot of ways to neutralize certain stuff from lead. Whether you want to run some weird fringe options like Lunge or Pounce, whether you want to just get a Thunder Paralysis, whether you just straight up want a Thunder Wave, you could throw a random Screen. I don't know if it gets Reflect, but I do know it gets Light Screen. And of course, with how fast Galvantula is, you pretty much could always just guarantee your web. Araquanid is slower, so, I mean, occasionally you could run some issues versus things like, you know, Rock Blast anti-leads. Breloom especially is annoying because Bullet Seed 3-hit does like 109 minimum, so pretty rough. One of the things Araquanid does have, though, is a much better Flygon matchup. And if you've seen me play into Sticky Web, whenever I've had a Scale Shot Dragon Dance Flygon, what I always do is I lead off with Flygon against Galvantula. Because that's going to be your best bet to try to deny the team something early, or at least punish them for going for webs. Potentially denying them, of course, too, because, you know, I talked about Pounce and Lunge. Well, Pounce speed drops, so people like to, if they're running the patented Pounce, they will spam Pounce and try and just deny you the speed. You get some weird 50-50s on whether to Flygon DDs up as you web up, and it can be very annoying for the web team. So, Araquanid, at least, having a much better time into Flygon, Liquidation literally just one-shots it after Scale Shot's defense drop. That is a pretty significant advantage, and in general, Araquanid is just ridiculously strong. Galvantula is no slouch, but Araquanid being able to just hit stuff pretty reasonably tough, or pretty reasonably hard, and having a good matchup into basically all the removers, bar Avalugg, and I guess Tentacruel's kind of meh, but it doesn't really do anything to you, and Liquidate does pretty good damage. It is nice. So, B rank seems pretty reasonable. Cinccino matchups also cited here. I think that is fair. Cinccino doesn't always have Rock Blast. We've actually seen a fair amount of just like Bullet Seed, Tail Slap, Tidy Up in an Encore or Knockoff. So, a little bit more advantageous for that multi-hitter Pokemon as well. Galarkuno also put in the rankings on B-. What I've seen mostly of it is on terrain. So normally it's grassy terrain, and you just get nice Calm Mind, you get a defense boost from the seed, and the cool thing is your recovery is not gated by weather. So unlike Celia, you have a little bit of an advantage in that regard. And then unlike DOD, you are immune to ground, which is not as prevalent, or not as useful in grassy terrain anyway. But it gives you maybe some more setup opportunities versus a potential like Banded Flygon, for example. Other things that are cool too, you can still definitely go more offensive on this Pokemon. I mean, it is really powerful. Future Sight, U-Turn, like this is literally your best bet if you want Future Sight support in the tier. I was gonna say other than Glowbro, and then I very quickly remembered Glowbro doesn't get Future Sight for some reason. So this is your best bet for that as well. We don't really see it, but I could imagine it being okay. Breloom, A rank, this mon is incredibly versatile. It is like actually criminal. Off the dome. Choice Band, Swords Dance, Bulk Up, Subseed or Sub Punch, Choice Scarf. You could have like Sword Stance with a Toxic, or it could be like Sword Stance with a Focus Sash and Technician. There's so much Breloom can do, and although I'm still not overall sure how good some of these sets are, they're all at least viable to varying degrees, and Breloom's best sets are quite viable. So although I voted it to be lower than A, I definitely respect it being put this high. And I think it helps too that even though Talon and Vileplume and Globro are some of the most prevalent physical walls, Breloom has little techs it can do with its sets to bypass them. So again, we talked about Terra Steel with setup being really cool. That helps with Globro. Yes, it can have Flamethrower, but it helps. Helps with Talon. Yeah, sure, you could still be running into Flare Blitz Talon, but you're going to be great into Brave Bird. And of course, just Wall Plume, which is really cool. Terra Steel also being cool for Crest DoD stuff. They can muscle past you if they get enough boosts, but potentially you'll win the 1v1. And it's pretty cool. Conchino A-. I think this is a bit of an overrate, but it is a cool option on HO. Now, the annoying thing is you're kind of limited in the amount of HOs you can use it on, because obviously you don't want to use it on webs because you'll just remove your own webs. You don't even really necessarily want to have to use it with a lead hazard setter, because you'll remove your hazards, but it is really cool to enable other Focus Sash Pokemon like Twister. And yeah, I mean, it's also just good in the HO matchup, as Stories has said here, because you could tidy up away a Sticky Web, and that can be really impactful. You could also, of course, if you're facing a Galv team, like we alluded to with Araquanid, you can just lead Chinchino into Galvantula. And even if they lead something else, I mean, you always have the option to be Encore. So, it's not like that's safe for them. Crest put into A, and then DoD put into A+. Of course, you do see the tier currently labeling DoD as a bit better. Crest is really good still. It's just kind of annoying because it takes a very long time to get going, so I kind of disagree with this, that it could snowball out of control quickly. I think Crest actually takes a good bit of time to snowball. Like, you need quite a good amount of circumstances satisfied to be able, or conditions satisfied is a better word, before Crest can really pop off. As y'all have seen, Incineroar, my favorite Pokemon to throw out versus Crest, pretty much always winning the 1v1, even if they have the defense boost. It's really not that difficult, and I just boost past him. Or he could be like a Alolan Muck and just kind of neutralize Crest entirely with Haze. You could be Wo Chien, and although Moonblast is super effective, you could throw off the Leech Seed, and since Crest is pretty weak without a lot of boost going, you're not really worried about Moonblast. And so having a Leech is at least nice, because then it punishes Crest for staying in the whole time. Still a great Mon though, and admittedly, even though there's a good amount of counterplay, a lot of the counterplay is still like very passive Pokemon that you can capitalize on with the rest of your teammates. The Cresselia support-wise, it's pretty easy to enable. I think standalone Mon though, A rank's pretty fine. DoD and A+ though, because it's like Crest, but a little bit better. I think this take here is really good. Setup sets are just as constricting as Cresselia, but arguably more. As we talked about yesterday in the Council Vote video, DoD's got a lot more ways to actively punish that counterplay and make it less reliable. So whether it's throwing off Nightshades maybe to just chip away at Incin, Alolan Muck, what have you, whether it's taunting some of these bulky setup sweepers or status inducers, you just deny them any success versus you. And then this doesn't even talk about how amazing of a spiker it is, or even just a stall breaker with Taunt Knock. It applies so much pressure to some of these slower paced teams. Really, the only drawback to DoD that I can think of is, I mean, against offense, it can kind of struggle, because DoD is most of the time, again, cosmic power boosting. So it's not boosting its offensive power, and offense can just kind of overwhelm it too quickly. Otherwise, though, it's, yeah, demonic. Next up, Decidueye. Oh my, this is so tilting how this is not alphabetized. Just right here. Regardless, Decidueye put into C rank. I feel like this is kind of a mantra that always is gone by when you're playing lower tiers. I guess any tier though, even OU would work. But if there is a tier below you, what are their good mons? They're probably good in your tier. Decidueye is considered maybe a ban-worthy candidate in PU. Why not try it in MU? And it's not bad with SD. Even like Banded can work okay, because Poltergeist immunities in this format are just not a thing. I think the one noted drawback, of course, is since the Psychic types are so good right now, there's a lot of Incineroar, and there's a lot of Alolan Muck. Now, Banded U-Turn can beat down Alolan Muck over time. The problem is Incineroar. Of course, if you are a Sun and Moon Inu player like myself, yeah, I mean, what's the biggest reason Decidueye's not good in Sun and Moon? Incineroar! And guess who's good again this gen? With Great Wish Pass support from Vaporeon or even Sylveon. So, it's still kind of rough, but if you run the very funny set that Mr. PhD ran, the Swords Dance U-Turn, you can at least have a good Wo-Chien matchup. You could even have a fine Alolan Muck matchup, because you are faster, so you can boost up and get some U-Turn chip. And you can potentially trap some Pokemon like Vaporeon if they're running, like Haze. I don't know if you beat it 1v1, you'd have to be Covert Cloak, and that's not really run in this meta. But the option is there, at least. And it's pretty bulky special defense-wise, too. So you probably can SD up alongside the Psychics. I don't know if you'll beat them 1v1, because they can Terra, and I'm not sure how much you do once they Terra, or how much they're doing to you. But I could see that matchup not being amazing. At least for Crest. DOD maybe doesn't matter as much for. The Dunsparce B-. I talked about this a little bit when I went over some tournament games. Jadun's pretty cool. You've got good setup options, and the set I've seen the most of is Calm Mind, with both Earth Power and Toxic being very good to beat down your counterplay. And in this meta especially, since Steel types are still kind of trying to find their footing, although we'll talk about Bronzong a bit more later on, which definitely gives Dodun some hell. With Steel types, though, definitely trying to find their footing, the Toxic Boom Burst set is just very, very strong. Because basically, the most common Boom Burst switch-ins just get poisoned. So you're thinking about, like, Diancie, probably the most relevant for that. And that's just free progress. But even then, if you're Earth Power, I mean, you still hit Diancie. You just then also have coverage for the non-Bronzongs. It's also good. Grafaiai, B-. Terrain is fine enough. Grafaiai is the best Unburdened Mon, so it goes up here. Hitmonlee somehow also getting put on here, but I do think the point about priority is worth mentioning. How Hitmonlee definitely is pretty susceptible to priority moves, even if it resists a lot of the most common ones. It's just so damn fragile that they still can pick it off from a surprisingly high amount of HP. You talk about, like, Lycandoggy, Bandit Flygon, you know, like, these are some very strong priority moves. So it's cool to have that insurance. And I mean, Hitmonlee has at least enough variance within its sets to where occasionally you could pop a check, like Glowbro or Talon or Plume. You could, like, surprise them and get rid of them. So it at least has that going for it. You'll never see me supporting Hitmonlee, though. Video, I believe, later in the month showcases that. Indeedee Male, it's at least a marginal buff to side terrain. Specs is an okay breaker. It sets terrain. It's just like, again, it does more, I would argue, in the slot for setting up the sweepers. At least from the perspective of breaking down checks. Female Indeedee is entirely supportive through, like, screens and whatnot. Indeedee Male's got some power. Sceptile into C, it just kind of acknowledged Sceptile's probably the worst of the Unburdens, but it's still acceptable. Main issue for Sceptile is just finding your coverage, because between all of EQ, Drain Punch, Rock Slide, it's kind of rough. And, funny enough, we could bring Bronzong up again. Bronzong just walls you. Staraptor to B-. Yeah, Staraptor's not bad. I think the issue for Raptor is with Hazard Control being kind of bad in the tier, and Raptor having pretty awkward overlap with Talonflame, the question becomes, what hazard removal do you want to pair with it? Because the thing is, let's look at our hazard control. So Talon is an S-rank Mon. But then we go down and it's like, where's the next one? This, we're not talking about Defog Pom Pom, no. Tidy Up Chinchino? I guess counts, but eh. Serena and A-, you'd have a lot of people arguing that's an overranking. In fact, I think Serena actually is supposed to be dropping on the VR. Am I right? You know what? I'm not even going to check right now. I'm going to check, though, after the video. I think Serena's supposed to be B+. I'm going to probably need to just go through. Brambleghast, though. You could run Bramble. I think that's probably the best. I think a lot of people would say swap Bramble and Sar. Tentacruel? As you can see, it's not like we lack removal options. It's just, out of all of them, only Talonflame is truly meta. So it can be a little annoying to support it. And of course, you know, it's super reliant on recoil moves as well. So When you mispredict, it's rough. Bronzong getting really good doesn't help because you can't hit it with CC for super effective chip. Same with Klefki, but still a solid breaker. And then, yeah, this is the greatest summation of why Croak is good now. If Vapo is good, then Croak is good. That is just how it works. There's no need to elaborate further. Do you have any other water type? Oh, it's actually kind of cool that you do check Gator. So if you run into a non-Ice Punch set, you will help with that. But yeah. Mr. Croaker. I'll open up the one with reasoning, I guess. That's cool. So, rises. Flygon up to S. We literally just have our new S rank right here. So Flygon went up to S. It's got a million good sets. Banded, Scale Shot, DD are probably the two scariest. Lumberry, Stealth Rock, or even just DD Stealth Rock. Those are also good. It's just, this mon is the easiest thing in the tier to get mileage out of. And you still have Reliable with Scarfgon too. Losing Bro was of course huge. Losing Crook was huge because it's competition. Bro was just a nice scout to choiced sets. And yeah, the reality is now our EQ switch-ins are a lot shakier than they used to be. Lycan Doggy up to S. Yeah, so Terra Dark SD. Yep. It's still good. Doesn't matter that Slowbro left. That set is still broken. And like I mentioned in my video, we don't really have fairy types that want to stand up to this. So it's kind of hard to naturally have something that checks it. Talonflame up to S. It is very obviously the best hazard removal in the tier. It's a good way for balanced teams to also avoid being too slow. Like, there's definitely an issue sometimes with building balance and accidentally building a pretty slow team. Talon helps prevent that issue from happening as much. As long as you got like a Scarfer and a Talon, and then some, you know, in-game setup sweeper, you're probably gonna have a team that's got enough speed. Because, you know, we can talk, again, look at balance. It's supposed to be a balance of 3 defensive / utility, 3 offensive Pokemon. Talon is one of your defensive mons is really nice, because that just automatically has the chance of you having like 4 mons above 300 speed, which you're gonna be pretty happy. Legion rose up to A. This is a fair thing to say, frankly. I think I literally just agree with this. Legion should have been A rank already. I also don't think that it really matters that Plume's everywhere, or Plume is better and Vapo's everywhere. I think you just have to be more committal with Legion nowadays with running Terra Blast Ghost, because you do kind of just smoke these mons. And if you're running it under Rain, you super smoke Vileplume, so it doesn't matter. Incineroar up to A+. Well, we got 2 really good bulky Psychic types, and Incineroar beats them both. It also checks a lot of breakers, like Shandy, Hisui type. It technically still checks even things like PZ. So, there's that. Just a very reliable mon. Nice slow pivot as well, if you want to run SD U-turn. I think this is a big one too. You don't care about Talonflame nearly as much as some other pivots like Mienshao do. So it's good. Pom-Pom rises. This mon's kind of weird, because some days I think Pom-Pom's like a B rank mon, and other days I think it's the most broken mon in the tier. But Reuniclus leaving is big. Magnezone leaving's big too, because it does open up the potential to run Mono Air Slash more. Same deal with Rhyperior leaving. You just don't need Rev Dance nearly as much now. So you can get away with the taunt sets, which are kind of necessary too. I find that a lot of offense teams do struggle a bit into Umbreon, and Taunt Pom-Pom's a pretty good countermeasure into that. And like Story said here, Reuniclus leaving is pretty big, because AV Reuni could kind of stifle the Quiver Dance Pom-Pom sweeps. Really, just again, a mon that there are a lot of mons that benefited immensely from shifts. Hurt's another one of them. Slowbro leaving, although they don't really have the same pool of mons they check, they were both physically defensive water types, so that is marginally good for it. Crook as well leaving, Rhyperior leaving. Like, if we're talking about like literal, like the most basic idea of competition, which is just Pokemon sharing typing, Hurt's another great example of a mon that benefits from all these changes. You lost 3 mons that were just better. I also just find that Hurt's slow pivot nowadays is like, yeah, I didn't even see this. Yeah, like slow flip is so strong. It's also really good with Roar and with DOD, setting up spikes really reliably for Pert. You can run Roar and just keep phase and get a ton of chip. It's very nice. Sylveon goes up. Again, some of this is just, I feel like some stuff that was going on in the previous meta and people deciding to vote a little bit based on that. Spec Sylveon was really good then, And Roar Sylveon is really good now. So that's two big things for it. And then two mons that rose Magnezone and Reuni. Those, of course, were detriments to it. Then we got Diancie up to A-. I think Diancie could have been A in the previous meta even, which is interesting because we had all these mons that were checks. I just feel like with how HO was the most prevalent type of team, and then Diancie was running offensive Trick Room and having really good matchups a lot of the time, you probably could have argued it, even though it lost a lot of counterplay, it's still a little worse. But regardless, very good mon. Even still. The one thing to keep an eye on is how much Bronzong affects it. In addition, if the tier starts slowing down and HO isn't as prevalent, is Diancie's value in the metagame diminished? I think it might, but only time will tell. Gator goes all the way up to A. I think I agree with this. I do think Gator was a bit underrated. It's to Danny for underrating it. Voting it B. How dare you? But now with Gator gone, not Gator, Slowbro gone, that is at least something that could bother it out of the picture. And a lot of people would argue Feraligatr is maybe one of the more integral parts of current hyper offense in the tier, just because it's very, very strong. There's not really a lot that, its coverage is good enough. Liquidation, Crunch, Ice Punch. Those three moves together are really hard for a lot of teams to deal with, because even things like Plume will just drop to a +2 Crunch. It's really rough. Vapo doesn't really check Gator either because it just takes too much Crunch. You better be Terra Fairy. And even then, Ice Punch can kind of mess you up from DD Gator. It's hard, but it can happen. And the bulk on Gator is also kind of annoying because you want to pick it off with priority. Sometimes you can't do that, and you also have to contend with SD censoring Jet, and it just... they may just be faster than you. So there's a lot Gator's got going for it. Definitely a mon that I'd also look out for in future voting slates. Inteleon up to A-. I'm a little surprised it rose, but I can kind of respect it as well. You look at SS in you, and you realize, okay, well, Vaporeon and Mantine are super good, so Inteleon shouldn't be very good. But it sits at about the same spot, viability-wise, in Gen 8's in you. Because, you at least can always U on those mons. And Inteleon's best set right now isn't even a choice locked set. It's running Scopelins, or like Boots or Mystic Water. So you're not even really punished by their presence. Like, okay, I snipe shot into a Vapo. Oh no, I'm U-turning the next turn anyway. So I don't really care. And I think this is also useful. Talon not punishing your U-turns. Like, yeah, you can still get burned, and taking Chip, it's not great, but it's not like super punishing like it is for a Mienshao. PZ goes up. It lost a million checks, and steel types aren't the most common. The most common ones right now that I see are Raja, Klefki, and Zong, and I would argue those are better to see than Registeel, just because Reggie, I believe, is the bulkiest of them all. So at the very least, if they're coming in on your resisted moves, it's not so bad. And you can even just have Shadow Ball for the Bronzongs, and like Terra Blast Ground for the others, so it's not too bad. It's pretty reasonable. I think also it definitely helps that Crook being gone. Or Crook being gone definitely helps because that was a T-Bolt immunity and a Revenge Killer. Umbreon continues to rise. It vibe checks offense really hard. And I think a big thing too is being able to so consistently force Terras out of Deoxys and Cresselia. That's good. Like, something that gets lost, I think, in the talk when you're discussing how broken a mon is. And you say, oh, well, this mon could just Terra and then it avoids Toxic. It's kind of the same thing that came up with Bro, where forcing a Terra is really good if you can do it. And the nice thing is, compared to Bro, Cress and Dio are not nearly as immediately threatening if they, get another boost as you try to Toxic. There is still, like, some room to save the game state from there. So, I feel like this interaction's even more pronounced nowadays. Glowbro rises up a ton, of course. Remember how I kept always mentioning to y'all that even though Slowbro was in NU, I still rated Glowbro pretty highly because functionally, it was still really good. It's just, Slowbro's better, so I kind of can't put this mon too high. Yeah, well, Slowbro's gone, so Glowbro went up to A. Very good pivot. It's got Toxic as well, which is really cool, so you got a nice amount of variety in statuses you can induce between T-Waving, Toxicking, even just throwing off Sludge Bombs. The setup sets are also pretty okay, but I think right now I wouldn't use them too much, just because I think the other psychics are a bit better. And then being able to actually, like, wall Breloom pretty decently. Facade, of course, can be scary, but not the end of the world, I guess. I think that helps. Like, Sludge Ball and Flamethrower is just so naturally good in this tier with T-Wave. Nothing really comes in on that. Everything can be punished. And I think that goes a long way. It also scouts out a lot of the fighters, which is important. Tentacruel goes up. We kind of just keep seeing people respect Cruel more and more. It's not some amazing Pokemon. At the end of the day, it's a little uninspiring in terms of some of its stats. It does feel a little flimsy. But the amount of roll compression that you get out of this Pokemon is insane. And I think that alone gives it value. Just like Glowbro, Vaporeon Rise is also all the way up to A. The best water type left, so now Vapo is here. The meta is also kind of slowing down a little bit, I would argue, which definitely helps Vaporeon. And there's just so much going for it. No Slowbro means this is the best water check. Slower meta means Wish Pass teams just become better, because you don't get exploited nearly as much by the high octane offense we were seeing in the last meta. And bulky setup sweepers that you don't have nearly as bad of a matchup into mean that you can use Vapo as a form of counterplay a lot more consistently. You have Roar and Haze, it's a lot better to DoD and Cress than they were to Slowbro, which could just like Psychic Noise you and try and prevent you from ever recovering HP. Or mandating you run Terra Dark instead of letting you have the option to be like Fairy or Poison or Steel even. Avalugg apparently went up. Huh? This mod go... Hey guys, so Avalugg went up because it gets better with Crook and Slowbro leaving, as it can spin much more freely now. And Crook was a physical threat that can knock it and threaten it after Terra. Did you know that? Because I didn't. Anyhow, Wo-Chien rises. I think I actually voted it to stay, but I'm fine with a rise. I think Wo-Chien's a very good staller. It's got a nice amount of options it can run too. Stun Spore, Knock, Ruinate, Foul Play. There's just a lot of tools that you can tinker with on it. Giga Drain as well is like perfectly fine if you want to catch someone greeting on the mono dark attacks. Wo-Chien. Subseed as well. I faced Demon. Absolute Demon. And with how bulky Wo-Chien is, you you literally 1v1 Lucario. You just one-shot it with Foul Play. You may need to Terra Poison, but you just one-shot it with Foul Play, and you don't die in one to +2 Luke. I find very funny. I do think Woe is... It's weird. I think the reason I voted it to stay was because Slowbro leaving. I'm like, okay, well that was a lot of its niche. It just took a massive dump on Slowbro. But I suppose maybe it was always a little underranked. So there you go. Bronzong rising, of course. I even say down here, it should continue rising. But it helps that you're probably the best Flygon answer available right now. Even if you're not the pure Demon set with Stored Power, Calm Mind, and Iron Press. If you're just Iron Press Bronzong, you just beat Flygon. You can run like Rocks, Iron Press, Nightshade, and you will win. You can technically run into Throat Chop Gone, but I find that set very cope. And I think the other options you have are a lot more valuable. I think you just lose too much by doing that. Now, it's still going to be an option you have to prep for, but it's not something that makes me go, oh no, Throat Chop Flygon, I hate! You know, it's like, who cares? Who gives a shit? And of course, 1v1ing Cresselia with ease if you are the Demon set is never going to get old for me. I love it. I love it a lot. It has a very nice spot in the meta right now, and frankly, a lot of the special breakers that are getting better, Zong has a better matchup into a lot of them compared to some of the other steals, which is good. Gligar rises a little bit. Some of this is the same thing as Pert, where it's just a matter of competition rising, so Pert by proxy gets a bit better. I think Gligar is okay functionally. It's kind of like Tentacruel, where it is a roll compression demon. I believe, though, Cruel ends up looking a lot better in comparison, though, because Tentacruel's got Spin. And Spin is just really important in this tier. Kilowattrel goes up, Rhyperior left, Magnezone left, Thundurus left, Aviaruni left, there's so much. And Kilowattrel's speed tier just feels a lot better now, too. Even Noivern leaving's actually kind of reasonable to talk about, because that was a, it's a fast-flying type pivot. Kilowattrel could fill that void. I also just find, though, that with Pert being the most common defensive ground type, you do beat that down pretty reliably. You're also pretty good at abusing Talonflame if they're not Flare Blitz, so you can come in on a Defog. Potentially, if you're competitive, you get that big boost. I think that's pretty worthwhile as well. Volt Absorb even, though, is fine, too. Like, if you want to use this as your Volt blocker, that's reasonable. The thing is, when we look at Inyo, when we talk about the move Volt Switch, it's very funny. I do think you could build reasonably well without even touching Volt Switch immunities right now, because what's using Volt Switch? Pom-Pom doesn't even learn it. GG, bozo. Galvantula shouldn't be running it. Rotom Heat, I don't even know why it's B+. This mon sucks. Like, the most prevalent mon that I could see Volt Switching is Toxtricity. You know, that's not exactly the most common mon. It is PU for a reason. So it's very funny. Meloetta went up to B+. I don't know why. I think it's just kind of utility plus a lot of vibes. If I'm gonna be honest with y'all right now, I believe Meloetta was risen to B+ entirely because other voters felt vibes from it. It showed nothing to be B+ at all. Nothing at all. Like, this rise was dumb to be this high. Now, I did vote Meloetta up to B. I used Meloetta in the last meta, and I think a lot of the stuff that played out for me when I used it just applies to this meta too. But I was using Calm Mind. I'm reading a post about Knockoff and U-Turn for an Assault Vest Pivot, which I'm sure is still a good set. So this isn't me knocking the reasoning here at all. It's more just me being like, why did I rise to B+? Which of you peoples used Meloetta once? Please. I want names. How many times have y'all used Meloetta? It's just a very interesting thing to see. That's really all I can see. Or all I could say. I think it may be still that it's a B+, A- mod. Like, again, I mean, it's got, what, base 600 stats? It can't be that bad. And with Mew leaving, that's like the most pronounced counterplay. Or not counterplay, competition gone. You could argue even Reuniclus was kind of competition, but I'd argue Reuni was more a check than anything, if you're thinking about setup sets or even choice sets. Hell, even AV. Reuni was a really good AV psychic type. So, very odd. And then you got Thwackey going up to B. Grassy Terrain is... If you're not me, because if you're me, Grassy Terrain is unviable, but if you're not me, Grassy Terrain is pretty alright, and Thwackey is the setter of choice, so B rank's fine. Now we get some drops. Mienshao goes down. Mienshao, I think, was okay enough for S rank last meta, although I did kind of understand why people didn't want to put it in S. Because it's like, was it really on the level of Slowbro, right? I felt at a point Mienshao was at least the second best mon in the tier. But as Plume started getting more and more use and Talonflame solidified its position as, you know, the second most used mon through in UPL, it definitely felt as if Xiao had no reason to be an S anymore. And this as well is important. With how good Luke is, you see so much Terra Ghost. And we already have all the Talon and Plume, which I talked about a ton in the last meta. I was like, yeah, Mienshao's worse now because, well, unlike Bro, you can't U-turn for free on these guys. So, I think it dropped to A+, makes a lot of sense. Goblin and Venusaur both... I mean, Venusaur basically was unranked, although, yeah, I mean, it's in C right now with 5 other Pokemon. Basically unranked. But Scovillain completely gone because, frankly, Manual Sun is just terrible. Venusaur at least has an argument for, like, maybe you could run Sunny Day 3 attacks on it. Maybe there's defensive sets to it. But there's really not much reason to try it. Raja drops down to B+. I think the point about a lot of the breakers being physical is really valuable. I will give this to Raj. Knockoff Whirlwind is really strong in this metagame. But I think Copper and A- is maybe a little bit overrated. And Talonflame being everywhere sucks too. You can always knock it, but you risk a burn. And it's like, in these Talon metas where you're a stealth rocker, you really want a way to more adequately punish it. Rocking up doesn't necessarily do that when Talon can always just hard switch into you as you set rocks, and it can defog immediately. You need to have a punisher. And okay, I was right about Serena dropping. So you ready for what we're gonna do here? I'm gonna press edit. And I'm gonna do this cool thing called copy or cut. You didn't know that. Cut and then paste. Yeah. And I had to pause because I had to sneeze. So you see, I really like it. That's why you should subscribe. I didn't sneeze in your ear. But Serena goes down to B+. I feel like Sarita just really hasn't been a very effective spinner for a while. because like the meta was so fast and Serena just gave up so many turns. You got at a point where it really felt the 4 move slot syndrome because it wanted so many different moves at once, like all of knock, axle, whip, spin, U-turn, I jump kick. If I didn't say synthesis there, if I did say it, well, I'm saying it again. It's needed so much. I feel like it's still really felt now in a tier where Talonflame, Bloom, Incineroar, Cress, Dio are all super common. And then once again, yeah, Terra Ghost is super common, so you're a rapid spinner. It's always a little brutal. H-type drops. I do like the speed over Shandy for what it's worth, because outspeeding Lucario without needing a Scarf is useful. But otherwise, you just struggle much more as a breaker. You require more support too, because of Eruption being your main stab option most of the time, which, you know, rocks go up, that's no good. So the combo of like Shandy and needing a lot of support is pretty brutal. Belly Bolt drops. I think frankly Belly Bolt just does not do a ton in this metagame. It is pretty valuable for just how fat it is. Like, it does kind of just sit in front of things. On the flip side, it's kind of whatever. A lot of time it's just not achieving a ton. And yeah, like Tog says here as well, when we don't have region spam being everywhere, the toxic stuff doesn't matter as much. And for what's too, the meta is still quite offensive. So Belly Bolt can kind of have momentum sapping issues. One thing, I mean, you can still give it, and it's in the same vein as Umbreon. One, it's just kind of weirdly bulky. Belly Bolt is like genuinely really annoying to kill. So if you don't have super effective moves for it, you're probably not beating it down. But two, again, like DOD and Crest, like you still threaten with the toxic. You can force that Terra, and that is going to be good. So there's reasonably Belly Bolt could, like, or not could. There's reasonably Belly Bolt is still like a generally alright mon. He's just, B's probably overselling it. And the same thing with like Satitan and Dreadnought. I think calling Dreadnought great is a bold take, but maybe without Slowbro, yeah, it's a little bit better. Satitan is mostly just that Snow is like really uncommon, and until Snow can establish itself as a real archetype, we're probably not going to see much Satitan going forward. And then I just want to point out my post here, because I do have some nominations I made. I think, and just things I want to talk about. Monkey Dory definitely should rise more. I believe its synergy with fighting types is just way too good. And with all the bulky setup, Trick Scarf is really good. Zong as well. I think Bronzong just cock blocks a large amount of the tier. Should go up further. I believe it is the second best steel type behind Klefki. And then Iron Thorns. Y'all remember the, I play till I have my second loss video? Iron Thorns is amazing. The only caveat to it is, like, coverage can sometimes be annoying. But otherwise, this mon routinely puts in a ton of work. I think B rank is way too low for it. Like, you're telling me Iron Thorns is vying with doo-doo-ass Raikou? Hell no. Get that trash out of here, bro. Iron Thorns is much better. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video. This is the last video I'm uploading before I go on vacation, but of course, like always, I've already got everything pre-recorded for y'all, so you're not going to have to worry about missing out on content. There is going to be stuff being uploaded while I'm gone. The only thing I do want to mention right now, and of course you watch till the end, you get this knowledge. Since I'm on vacation when tier shifts happen, the video will come out on like the 3rd or the 4th, whenever I feel like doing it. It's not an actual shift, so I mean, maybe something could quick drop, but that's the most that would happen. We'll discuss usage stats, though, regardless, because that's always fun. But I appreciate y'all. Once again, subscribe if you are not already. You made it through 39 minutes of me yapping. That's gotta be pretty good, right? Take care, though, y'all. I'll catch you next time.